I think that's the biggest thing that I want church leaders to take away from it is that your time is the most valuable asset you have for the church,
Hmm.
and you should be spending it in community. You should not be spending it answering emails or thinking about how can I write this email.
Welcome to the How Leaders Think podcast, a show that transforms you by renewing your mind and giving you new ways to think. I'm your host, Katie Lange, and with me today is the Katie Allred, just like it's spelled. She is the founder of churchcommunications.com and leads an online community of which I am a member of 30,000 plus church leaders worldwide. It's incredible. When she isn't doing that, you can find her teaching at different universities. She doesn't have her corncob pipe, but she is a professor, speaking at conferences and writing at katieallred.com. She is a thought leader in marketing, business, and Christian leadership. She also has published a book on church communication, which is pretty ballin'. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Hey, Kenny, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I feel like I'm on the verge of almost too caffeinated, but we'll see where
Cool.
the afternoon takes us.
All right. Yeah, maybe let's slow down.
We're going to slow it down in post. So we'll speed it up and then it's at like half speed. It's a little behind the scenes tidbit for all the listeners. But tell me today, Katie, what is on your mind?
Yeah, right now I am really focused on helping churches use AI. I think there's a lot of stuff happening in that space, but really I'm like helping them adopt AI tools to enhance their communication, to streamline their workflows and figure out how to like deepen their connection within their community. And I'm really interested in how like AI can support like communication directors, for example, because that's what I wrote my book about was church communication.
Which I love. I'm a huge fan. We were already talking before I hit the old record button about that. But I'm curious with this move and your focus, because you have done a lot with just overarching church communications.
Sure.
This is a specific niche depending on what part of the country you live. Don't care. But what are you seeing as you are broaching this topic? Like what's the current thinking or prevailing wisdom in churches today about the use of AI in whatever part of ministry it could apply?
Yeah, it's either a lot of hesitancy or a lot of excitement. It's one or the other. I don't think there's a lot of in between, or it's just ignorance. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. So if they know a little bit about it, they're either really excited or really hesitant. But I think, the thing about any new technology is you either get on the bus and stay on the bus or you get off the bus entirely. So
or you get run over by the bus.
Yeah, one or the other, right? Like, I mean, it was just like when we started using radio or even, the press. I think people are always like so surprised by new technological advancements, like it's going to ruin the church or something. And that's just not the case. It's, if anything, it's going to help quite a bit. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you might have people go so far like, well, they didn't have AI in the Bible. It's not specifically in there, so we don't even deal with that. I was like, I'm sorry, but do you know how to read? Because not a lot of those people could either.
That also wasn't biblical reading.
So yeah, so that's really what I want to talk about today is walking back reading.
Biblical
illiteracy. Wait,
yes.
Well, that's a different problem in the church.
That's a whole thing, actually. Like if we consider that, then it really changes interpretation of text quite. But we won't go there today.
We won't. I don't think we have enough time. That might be a whole podcast unto itself, and maybe
you
one
can
that
find
we should.
Someone else for that. I'm not a biblical scholar by any means.
I think that's what makes it even better.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
I know, but I have no theological education whatsoever. I mean, maybe I took one New Testament class in undergrad, I think, for the kicks and giggles. But
you know what's neat? Neither did the disciples. So there you go.
Oh no, now we're getting real, Kenny. Let's not. The people
I
are gonna
think
have
we
feelings.
jumped off into a different
We gotta
topic.
walk it back. Yeah, we're going to talk about AI now.
It, if anybody wants to, you can email all of these questions to Katie at, I'm just kidding, or you could pass them on to someone else. I am curious though with those AI in general, not even just in churches, but in business or just
Mm-hmm,
personally, I have found it it is either dread
mm-hmm,
or really more like a unhealthy suspicion
mm-hmm.
about it, or just like a
Yeah,
wild exuberance
right.
and since we have mentioned the Bible, zeal without knowledge. um
Without knowledge. Wow.
yeah, there you go. There's some deep cuts. Don't ask me to figure out the reference on it. I'm great at scripture so long as you don't ask me where it's located.
Yeah, yeah,
um Except for John 3:16. I know that one. That's a good one. I only know that because of Tim Tebow. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um
Fair.
So, because what's funny is I even had a conversation with a gentleman in my church
Mm-hmm.
a couple Sundays ago, and I was talking about AI and how I was using it and leveraging it in a lot of my coaching practice, because I
Yeah.
just feel like it's a way for me to find new connections between the tools that I use, the concepts, the frameworks, maybe create custom solutions, courses, stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
he just threw out there, and it was that he's like, well, I don't like it. I think it's going to take a lot of people's jobs. And I was like, but at the same time, it's going to create a lot of jobs. And I went further on that, and probably a stereotypical sarcastic Kenny way, like, hey, do you like cruise control in your car? Well, that's a really dumb form of AI. But I'm curious, like,
But
what
it's really smart, now it can like really track the people in front of you and that kind of stuff.
it can. Yeah, it's freaky what some of the, like, even the Tesla graphics, like those, I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. I was like, Knight Rider, for all of my Gen X listeners. But when you see that move and there's not a whole lot in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think underlies those beliefs? And then why might both, like, super duper excited and super duper hesitant, be
Mm-hmm.
unproductive in their thinking?
Well, I think the people that are one end probably see it as often too complex. And then
Hmm.
also, is it even worth going into? Like, they think of it being like only useful for large organizations or maybe really tech
Hmm.
savvy people,
Mm-hmm.
tech savvy teams. But I don't think that is the case. I think it's really useful, probably the most useful for smaller teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of hesitancy because they think, oh, I've got to learn. There's a huge learning curve. And I don't think that's the case. I think it really is a thing you can just start using today
Mm-hmm.
and see how it helps your life. And then you can add other tools. But like you can really just start with ChatGPT and start talking to it and seeing what it can do for you
Right.
and then go from there. I think that's it more than anything. I don't know that like it's yeah, there's going to be obviously people who are like, oh, that's not ethical or it's anti-biblical or there's those
Yeah.
kind of hesitancies. But that's going to be a hesitancy about anything. Where I think the big hesitancy is, well, I am a dinosaur and cannot possibly use. I have a hard time doing my email.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, this will actually help you do your email. So there is that, like it's
Yeah.
going to help you so much in your like daily life that you're going to be surprised by the end of it, like how much you have learned and also how much it has just helped you do things more efficiently and also taken away some stress about how to word things or
Mm-hmm.
do things or strategy or process or think through. I think of it as a great like assistant to like bounce ideas off of and those type of things. So yeah.
Which is huge if you consider it, because usually you have to, like, hire employees and have staff meetings and do all that sort of
Right,
stuff in order
right, right.
to bound or high price coaches, consultants,
Consultant.
people
Yeah.
like what we're doing now. I have leveraged it for that reason. I mean, I'm a one person company.
Yeah, of course.
But since I've been able to jump on, I can ask some questions, some feedback. And of course, now since GPT has added the search function, we can get live feedback. There's also Perplexity, which can look into like real time internet data. Whereas before you had to like copy paste and do some different things or really specifically direct it. So I think it's huge. I'm curious if you've come across people who somehow think that to interject it somehow takes away from the humanity that is essential in ministry, whether it's preparing a sermon,
Yeah.
replying to a question about your church and first time visitor or any of that. If it sort of strips out the human connection element, because I have heard a little bit of that. Is that something that you've encountered?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely that hesitancy. I would say though that all of this data is trained on humans, so it's not, pulling from space or
Beep
some
boop.
robot. It is a robot, but it's pulling from human
It's a cool
information.
robot.
Yeah. It's a robot, but it's a cool robot. Yeah, and the truth is that you can train it on your data. You can train it on how you've spoken. For example, like I can upload a chapter of my book or whatever. I can upload blog post or something that I've written in the past and have it write as if it were me. And that gives it definitely a way more human aspect to it for sure. And that's something I think we're working on a lot. You talked a little bit at the beginning about my church communications Facebook group. We also have an AI for churches Facebook group as well. It's a little smaller. Kenny's in there though.
So it's
And
totally cool.
so it's totally cool. It's where you can come and hang out and learn some of this. Even if you're not at church, I'm cool with you being in there. If you just you want to learn. I think we have some really awesome like cohorts going on and we're offering coaching and stuff for that now, just because this is the cusp of it. It's just the beginning of what this is going to be. So
yeah. Please, we'll include links to join and all those sorts of things so people can find this. But one of the things that I hope people understand, and I try to, for lack of a better term, evangelize, is that this shift is as big, pivotal as the internet being democratized to everybody and not just being a government or a university or like large institution type of tool. It's not a question of if this will stick around. It's like how many different places will it seep into, be applied to? How essential will it be for you to know how to engineer prompts and to what degree? I do think going into one of the things you said about some people are intimidated. And I think that there are a lot of people they're like, man, I'm feeling good to use my smartphone. I butt dial somebody every day and it's different. Or I keep signing off on Facebook messages like I wrote a letter. So they may be intimidated by it. I would say, unlike when coding and becoming a programmer was just pushed so hard for probably the last decade or so as like an essential skill, which I firmly believe in. Like I've told my kids, I was like, you probably should learn a little bit of this, or at least understand, have a rudimentary understanding.
Yeah, my undergrad.
This is natural language.
Yeah.
Like literally the only thing you have to be able to do is write and speak barely, if that, to start to make progress. And even as somebody like me who's, I've been a technology forward nerd for as long as I can remember. I remember my dad buying a computer from CompUSA. And I was like 5. And we set it up and it took forever. I mean, you could, say, I want to go to this website and come back in like 30 minutes later with dial up. Built my first website when I was 7. It was about wrestling, sadly, but I hope that page has been taken down. But
I love all this.
Angel Fire.
Okay. Yeah.
Angel Fire. And I started learning some, I think it was HTML 2 or 3 at that point.
Yeah.
But I say all that to say is I've loved technology for a long time. And even I getting started, like I wasn't it was neat how much the volume of data that it could shoot back at me. But it's taken me, I would say, probably a good 4 to 6 months for me to
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I'm just now getting to a
Proficient.
place to where I can engineer a prompt
Sure.
to get the response I want. I have done, and I think everybody should do what Katie was just talking about with the have it learn your voice. I've done this differently in both ChatGPT and Claude 3.5 as of this writing is the one I was using, but feed it blog post, LinkedIn post, a different thing,
Mhm.
and have it analyze it and create a writing style guide. And now you have a
Mhm.
document that you can upload into any chat and say, I need you to abide by these rules. And you can even put some stuff in there to help improve if you're like, I suck at writing stories. Actually, that's one of my things is putting stories into my writing, and also I'm not going to
Yep.
say dumbing it down, but simplifying
The
my
concepts.
concepts and my speech and the words that I use. I mean, my wife makes fun of me all the time whenever I speak. She's like, I didn't understand half of what you said. You need to, reduce your words down. Like it's a
Mhm.
$7 word. You need a $2 word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so now I've woven that in so I can feed it back and go, oh, my ideas are taking shape and I'm learning from it, which is, and having it ask me questions. So I think that
Sure.
those are some simple things that it feels human like.
Yeah.
And now we could go down the other rabbit trail of like people forming unhealthy attachments to AI entities. I mean, there's been some pretty sad stories in the
Sure.
news recently, but
Mhm.
I think that makes it accessible.
That's
Now
such an exception
let's
to the rule, though. Those incidents.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so please people don't take the worst thing and make that the rule as is typical for most news. But let's walk to the other side of
Sure.
the equation where people are just, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. What?
And it is.
We're gonna, and it is, but they're like, we got to use it here and here and here, because I do think that there's another ditch you can fall into with this. Like you can steer clear of it completely and be afraid
Yeah.
of it, but you can go in the other direction. What do you see when you see people who are headed towards that?
Yeah, I think, I I have headed that direction sometimes too, of, well, ChatGPT can think of this strategy better than I can. And then I
Hmm.
will go down that wormhole of having it go back and forth with me about what this is and what it should be. And then by the end of it, I've spent 2 hours not gotten anywhere, right? Because I'm just like, no, like this is terrible. Like I could just write this. Let me just write this. And
Right.
so I'll, sit there and write it out. And because like it has an idea of what it thinks the best podcast strategy could be or whatever. It has like its own, opinion
Mm-hmm.
on what that is, but it doesn't know actually what your niche is, or like it doesn't know. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you could feed it that, but I think at the end of the day, you know what you like to listen to. And so why don't you write it out, and then you could feed that to ChatGPT and have it improve upon that. But
Mm.
sometimes I think we want to take the critical thinking out of our jobs, and that's fair. I've done that, and but it's funny because the next day I go, that's not what I want at all. Like I want this, and
Yeah.
that makes me required to like actually sit down and write it. But I've been doing that a lot more lately because I am a little disabled. If you're watching this on video, I lost my right arm recently. To I had elbow replacement surgery. I just tripped and fell. I wish it was cooler, but that's my dominant hand and I cannot use
Ooh,
it. And
man.
so I can't type, and I've really become reliant on now Apple Intelligence and dictation software that has a lot of AI in it. And I love it. It's been so incredibly helpful. I actually think it's made me a better speaker because I have to think some before I speak. Although now the AI can go back and say, "Oh, you might say, oh, I wanted to meet you at 5," and then I go, "Oh no, I mean 6," and it will like fix that for you.
Mm-hmm.
But think about the possibilities of how great it is too for accessibility and for making your life easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned about the making you a better speaker and stuff. One of the things that in learning to write better prompts and just interact with different AI agents or models,
Yeah.
I I didn't realize how much of when I spoke or when I was writing ideas, how much I compressed into one like paragraph or sentence of things, or
Sure.
how many steps my brain is processing
Mhm.
simultaneously to get to something.
Yeah.
And I would sort of put in the last line of whatever I was thinking before the output and just expect it to know that. And
Right.
and once I figured that out, and I was like, okay, well, I got to break down what I'm doing here so I build this right. If I were building it step by step, what would I do?
Yeah.
So now my prompts are much more broken up, but it's
Yeah.
been neat because it's helped me get better insight into how I'm processing
How you think,
and how I think and what building blocks are there,
right?
which has been a weird side effect
Right.
of this that I wasn't planning on. I hadn't really heard anybody talk about other than, chunking, like
Sure.
chunk your requests in a certain way and do this just from like
Yeah.
productivity
Yeah.
efficiency standpoint, but not really from an insight. Is that, even before your super cool trip and fall, was that something that occurred to you, or have you heard from other
It
people
definitely
about how
changed
it
the way
changes the thinking?
I think, yeah, it definitely changed the way I think about how I approach a problem or approach work or how I'm going to answer my work or do it. I think before, yeah, if I was told, hey, make a marketing strategy about this, well, I would probably start with Googling what is the market. No, I'm just kidding. But I'd probably start with,
There's
what
probably a
are
great template on churchcommunicators.com for
yeah,
that,
yeah, church communications. Yep, yep,
or
yep.
communication.
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would probably do that. No, I think I would, I would approach it differently than now, wondering what is the best, what is the best place to get started. Instead, like I would just get started, and I might not think about what I need background information wise to make it the better
Mm.
strategy. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so I would just like say, well, this is what we've done before, or like, or this is what I've, or what we have done in the past, or, I would rely on the information that I have, right? Well,
Hmm.
with this now, I'm like, oh, I have infinitely more knowledge that I can access. What is the better way to do this? And so, starting by asking those questions. And I asked ChatGPT a lot more questions than I think, and actually have it ask me a lot more questions than I think I have it, ask, or I ask it. Excuse me, that's
Yeah.
the right way. So like typically what I'll do is like, okay, I am making a marketing strategy. What questions do you have for me to make the best possible strategy? Um,
Yeah.
Kind of reversing the logic,
Hmm.
and so then it like spews out 20 questions or whatever, and then I can answer those 20 questions, and it has made me really think through what am I doing. And you can always say, well, this question's not applicable, or that kind of
Hmm.
thing. But like it really helps you have a much better starting place. And then even from there you can be like, okay, but what about this specific thing? I want to go more into social media with the strategy. What could we do with that would help? What campaign could we make to make this strategy better or whatever? And
Hmm.
so just having it, I don't know, just asking it questions to ask it to ask me also is very helpful.
Yeah. I think before, I don't think we had discussed it. It was probably before the I hit record, but the last month I've pretty much I've switched off of ChatGPT. I'll still use it for some things, but I've been focused on trying to learn Claude and some of its
Yeah,
differences. And it's been really I've loved it, especially for writing and putting some things together. It comes up, even if you didn't ask it to, it comes up with some thoughtful responses and questions. I'm like, oh well, that's a really cool idea, and no one
yep,
had to know that I was too dumb to think about that in the first place. But one of the parts I put into the writing instructions on, I built one for like the communication frameworks and strategies for like marketing
sure,
and sales and all sorts
yeah,
of stuff. And I gave it instructions that while it's an expert on all these things, I want you to act more as a coach to help me learn and deconstruct these things. So now it will ask me more
Mhm.
questions, or I do like you did and say, here's all the things I know and I
Mhm.
understand. Can you please ask me questions to fill in the gaps, or what even in the documents I've given you, like these frameworks and these principles,
Yeah.
what information have I not given you and supplied that would fit this so that we could move forward? And that has been a total game changer because you can't hire a coach on anything for 20 bucks a month.
No, for sure not. Yeah.
So has that become more and more of a go-to strategy for you in getting started and sort of like unlocking your thoughts? Because you if you're anything like me, you bottle up all these thoughts. You have a campaign idea or a business idea or whatever project,
Yeah.
and you're sort of collecting stuff internally until you're ready to like sit down and just start building
Yeah.
out the
Well,
skeleton. And so you have so much bottled up that you can't get it all out at once.
yeah. Well, I think too, being able to upload all those things into Claude or
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT and then say, okay, make some sense out of this, or like, where am I going with this, or whatever, is like really
That's cool.
nice. And so, you could even like export all of your past blog posts and be like, make sense out of this into a book. Like, could I make this into a book? Like, what does this look like? Or, all those kind of things. There's so much, like, what would I need to expand on in order to make this better? Those kind of things. Or if you're a professor, how would you grade this? If you're a professor of business or a professor of
Mm.
English, or those kind of things, how would you grade this? What feedback would you have for me? Because I'm a professor, I use it often for, like, giving feedback or helping me come up with, how can I better expand on my thoughts to give the feedback to the students that are learning, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's a great way to use it.
One of the things I think is that people underestimate is I in my opinion, I feel that these models, whichever one you're a fan of, and I know we've mentioned two, but there's also Llama and Gemini. Gemini's from Google, Llama it
Mhm.
was Facebook, and I think somebody else that uses Llama.
Meta, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that this has taken away the excuse of the blank page and the blinking cursor is intimidating. The ability to start something fast and ideate it
Mhm.
is crazy powerful. And so to me, I think my hope is that people see it more and more as an empowering technology for more people to be able to do more work or to try out their ideas. And especially for if you're a person listening to this and maybe you don't have that big bold personality, you just storm into the staff meeting or whatever it is, and this is my idea and here's how it's going to change the company or the church or the ministry or the whatever it is. If
Mhm.
that's not you, and that's okay, I think this gives you more of a fighting shot and helps you put together those
Yeah.
ideas more coherently to where you can bring more innovation, more of your ideas
Yeah.
to life. Because I see so many people who, if I have a conversation with them, I'm like, these people are brilliant, they're insightful, but for them to generate it in and of themselves, that's not a strong suit of theirs, and that's okay. There's
Yeah.
weaknesses that come from being a loud jackwagon like me. But notice I pointed at me. I didn't include Katie in that, so nobody email me that I'm calling guests jackwagons. I have other people I may do that to, but I think that that's also something that's really cool that I hope that this shift in technology and
Mhm.
information and communication brings about in some of your, whether it's in the cohorts that are getting started or
Mhm.
even just one-on-one or maybe some of your students. Are you seeing some of this, or are people still hesitant because there's some sort of doubt about themselves or the value of their ideas, or what's happening there?
No, for sure. I think a lot of people are gaining a lot of confidence, especially coming out of the cohort or starting coaching, just like learning that they're perfectly capable of using it. That's just
Mm-hmm.
another tool like Microsoft Word or Sheets or Google Sheets or whatever for getting your job done. Gosh, I remember I don't know. Yeah, you probably remembered. I'm just kidding. When Excel came
Whoa.
out.
Okay. You know what? I take back my loud jackwagon comment.
No.
Since we're shooting, we just
You
did
kidding?
we just become best friends? I think so.
Excel came out. And it was crazy. The accountants didn't know. They were like, we're not going to have a job anymore. And of course, now they still have jobs. They're just
Right.
different. And so I think that's going to be a big part of that. I think like the biggest thing is just handling routine tasks. I think it's also freeing up people to have time for deeper community building efforts. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I want church leaders to take away from it is that your time is the most valuable asset you have for the church.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be spending it in community. You should not be spending it answering emails or thinking about, how can I write this email to our church about this thing when you could have AI help you write it so much faster, get it out so much quicker, help you design a graphic that looks great, and then you're done. I think all these things are really important. Obviously, I wrote a whole book about church communications, but I also think more importantly, it is you should be spending time in your community. You should be serving people. That is our number one reason for existing, is to help people. And so, just doing these admin tasks probably takes up a good 80% of a lot of pastors' day. And
when most people think that they're just out like golfing, it's like they work one day a week and then they spend the rest of their day doing whatever. A lot of it is like probably soul draining administrative work. I love that idea that this can free you up to do more of the things that, in my experience, most pastors would love to spend more time with their people. But the demands of the job take them otherwise, and then they get to show up on Sundays and Wednesdays, and occasionally a small group or counseling session. But oftentimes it's not just in I'm really doing a work to avoid saying the phrase "doing life together" because it's so overdone. But I mean, that same idea of having non-productive time spent with the people, which I think gets more at the heart of community, which we could probably go on a different rant about why community is so hard to find inside of churches, because there's no investment. It's a production. It could be just speaking.
Just find a small group in your church as a Pakistani immigrant who is a single man who doesn't have a family and is in his 30s, his mid 30s. Probably not.
Yeah, that might be difficult. So do you also see this as beyond just, hey, let AI take care of some of these tasks that, lack of a better term, anybody could do or whatever, that can it help create more community directly? That's sort of an indirect help. Do you see it as an option to help create community?
I think of it more as like, instead of seeing AI as like this complex or impersonal thing, that church leaders should consider it more as an assistant that helps them with practical tasks. That can help them draft messages, automate their responses, or like help them analyze trends, help them figure out, the basic task of life so that they get back to the more important relational aspects of ministry.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a thing in leadership. I don't know who takes responsibility. We probably could just give it to Maxwell, since he said everything about leadership that ever needs to be said. But a lot of times in leadership, when I'm working with people, as I talk to them about getting back to doing what only you can do. There are some things that you can't outsource.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
writing your
I've
sermon.
had.
You should not use AI to write your sermon. You should not outsource writing your sermon. You should write your sermon.
If you want some ideas on or stories or pieces like that, but you have also got to what's the Holy Spirit telling you that you need to be teaching your people?
Right. Right. That's a big part of it. I think you can use it for ideas. Absolutely. I think, and also finding scripture, finding quotes, those kind of things for sure. We
I've done
actually
that.
have a whole tool built for that called Sermon Spark that pastors can use for free. So that's always fun.
Nice. We'll have to
Yeah.
pick up the link on that. I don't know. My pastor may fight me on that, but it's okay. It's a fight worth having. So if someone's thinking, hey, I love this. Maybe this isn't as big and bad and scary as I thought it was going to be. Or maybe the enthusiast heard something that they go, oh, I see now how I could practice. I want to use it, but I don't need 30 more subscriptions. And it also is becoming a bit of a tangled web of different language and
Yeah.
definitions for the
Mhm.
same things and whatnot. But if somebody said, I want to get started, I would love to build some confidence. What's something that they could do as a baby step in the next 24 hours with little to no money to start down that path?
I would start with a simple AI tool like ChatGPT or Claude, and both have free tiers. And
Mm-hmm.
and the free ones are just as good as the paid ones. You just are limited by how many times you can talk to them. So you might end up saying, well, now I'm talking to it too much and I should probably pay for it. And I think that's a good way to tell if you should be paying for it or not. There's also, if you're like, oh, I want to try them all. I mean, there's tools like Magi, and I have a link to get that a little cheaper, but it lets you try a bunch of different options. So that's cool. Like you can use Gemini, you can use all of those different things inside of one tool, one subscription. But I think really like, okay, if you're going to start in the next 24 hours, like starting with a simple tool like ChatGPT or Claude, and then generate like a draft message to an email, like put an email thread in there and say, hey, write a reply for me. I am this person. And then see, what it comes up with. Maybe have it brainstorm some content ideas for you, like, hey, we have an event coming up. What, could we do to promote it? Those kind
Right.
of things. Maybe have it analyze some different data for you. Of course, not sensitive data. Don't upload your giving information. But you could probably upload like attendance numbers over the last few
Mm-hmm.
years or that kind of thing and say, okay, what are the trends? What are the things we're learning? If you have a survey that you did of your people recently, you could upload
Yeah.
that and find out probably some really good, significant insight. And so I think those just starting with like small, manageable tasks will allow leaders to see what AI's potential really is.
I I love all of those things. They're great to try. And also if you are a much smaller church too, I know trying to pull off events and things like that, and not just the promotion, but the organization of it
Mhm.
can be a nightmare. It can do pretty robust but simple to understand like event plans and things
Mhm.
like that. So it can
Yeah.
organize that and it does it in a nice, typically a bulleted
Yeah.
form.
You can even ask
Um,
it to change that bulleted form to a table and then copy
right.
it over to a Google sheet and assign it to people. Like it's amazing what you can
Yeah.
have it do, right?
That part was neat when I started using it. I did that I was looking for some conferences to speak at and application and got all of it down and then said export. And I was like, this is cool. That saved me so much
Mhm.
time. So, and the other part is if you don't feel like you're getting the right answers, a quick tip is just ask it to help you improve the prompt, which feels super meta. As
Yeah.
help me ask you a better question than I just
Yeah.
asked you. And
Yeah.
instead, I
And
feel like
accurate.
if you do that, I'm like, I'm also wondering, well, if it knows how to improve it to get a better answer, why didn't you just answer it the better way in the first place? But
Yeah.
maybe in a few years it'll be able to do that. Katie, I really appreciate your time and your wisdom. If people want to know more about you, connect with you, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, well, of course, you can go to katieallred.com. You can go to Church Communications with an S.com. Or if you want to learn more about the AI work that I'm doing, you can go to AI, whoops, words, AI dash four dash churches.com. I know. See, you bought the domain name originally, you said, and
I
it
probably did. I probably just messed you all up on that one.
and that's why
Sorry.
I'm over here with all my dashes, excuse me, but it's AI-4-churches.com. And so, yeah, you can visit us there and sign up. The cohort we're actually starting in January, so pretty soon.
Ooh.
It's only $99 and it's 3 training sessions altogether, and it's limited to like I think less than 20 people. So if you want to get
You
in,
just run in one, or if you get enough,
we
would you
will.
split it?
Yeah, we'll probably, yeah, if we got enough in January, we probably would split it. But then also we will run another. So yeah,
Okay,
this is
awesome.
now.
And where can they sign up for the cohort? Is that at Church Communicate or the AI all your dashes?
All the dashes
AI all the dashes.
for
A,
churches. AI
yes,
dash for
we'll have
dash
that linked up.
com.
So I hope if you are a church leader or a church leader, even if they are playing with it, experimenting with it, is this a cohort that's great for beginners,
Oh, yeah,
intermediate, all time?
100%. It's all made for basically beginners. I think if you're even intermediate, you'll probably still get something out of it because it's still so new, right? So I think just watching someone else use it teaches me a new trick every time because everybody uses it so differently. And
Yeah.
so I think, doing that together in a group of different church leaders is helpful. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and I hope to have you back on again in the future. Maybe when maybe the AI can join us on
Maybe
the
so.
call and interact like an iRobot sort of thing. Maybe we'll get one of Tesla's robots to join us on the call.
Excellent.
That could either be great or terrifying. So we'll figure out which one. Stay tuned. But thank you so much. And to the listener, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I hope this was helpful and beneficial and helped you take a next step. Whatever platform you're on, I would appreciate a like, a rate, a review, a subscribe, whatever the right button may be. And also, it's a great way to just pay it forward. Those sort of actions and engagements help bubble this show, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, sort of playlist to the top. And you never know what conversation may unlock a fellow leader's next step in their leadership journey. But until next time, change the way you think, you'll change the way you lead. We'll see you.